so two things to start off right away. Get it rolling, maybe. So the reason I'm excited for this is I was just thinking about you're a core people for me. So what I mean by that is there's like only so many people that I've known as long as I can remember being alive, and you're one of them.
Same here. I was thinking about that too.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I can't remember the last time that I saw you in person. I was trying to pinpoint it, and then one memory sticks out more than others from Bethany, but I know that wasn't the last time.
Wow. I remember at Bethany. And then I think I remember seeing you one time when we were out like in Fond du Lac. We were like out, my husband, because I brought my husband to Fond du Lac. And I think we were out at the bars and we randomly bumped into you.
Okay.
I think that was it.
Was it?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember it.
And that,
but you're right.
No year.
Yeah.
No clue on the year. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, so you're in Minnesota right now, did you say?
No, I'm in North Dakota.
North Dakota. Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
So
we got a lot of catching up to do.
We have moved again, kind of the story of our life. And we've been here now like almost 2 years exactly. This is where my husband grew up.
Okay.
And then he, about 2 years ago, interviewed for a job because he had someone that he grew or that he was in a professionally taught with, that said every like 5 years, either scrap your curriculum completely or apply for other jobs just to kind of keep yourself fresh in the interview process and everything like that. So he had kind of come up on that time. And there was a teaching position here in Denmark that was open. And he interviewed for it, and they were like, you know what? This just isn't going to be for you. It's special education. You know, you're an English major. We just don't think it's right for you. But we have a need for better position we'd like to actually create for you. So he was like, okay, I'll hear about that. So he talked to him about it. The next day they had another little like Zoom meeting because this was pandemic time too. And they're like, kind of interviewed him for this new position, offered it to him, and we moved 4 days later.
Wow.
So I had to like, thankfully his parents are still here in Bismarck. So we like stayed with them for a little bit until we found a place. So,
okay.
But yeah, that was our latest adventure.
Yeah. Wow. So how long ago was that, did you say?
2 years ago.
Okay.
Well, okay, before we go any further, if it's all right, I'd like to start back at the beginning of Kayla's life. And, you can go into as much or as little detail at any given period as you'd like. But if you could kind of start at the beginning and explain how you got there, that'd be sweet.
Yeah. So I was actually like writing some things down because I've listened to a lot of your, I want to say podcasts, but I watch these, like the actual YouTube videos of it. And, like,
thank you.
We've known each other since before kindergarten, pretty much since birth. I remember, coming over to your house when we were little. Your mom would watch us, and then we went to the same Lutheran grade school, high school, and then we overlapped in college as well. So I grew up in a conservative Wells family. That's the way I have now begun to explain it when people ask me like where I grew up and everything like that. So I grew up in a conservative Wells family, and actually my father is a pastor. Is a Wells pastor. Does not have a church body, but he taught, just recently retired from teaching religion and Latin at a Lutheran high school that we attended.
And Wells stands for what?
Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod.
Okay.
Yep. So, I was kind of thinking back, and I was like, my whole journey that I'm kind of going to be talking about starts way back when we were little and growing up in this conservative family. We were always with my parents making that choice, send us to Lutheran grade schools, and high schools, we were always really stretched financially. And I remember working since I was like 10 years old, doing a paper route, and then working at Dairy Queen. And you weren't one of the Dairy Queen people. No, it was like Joel and Nina. Okay. I was like, did you work with us at Dairy Queen?
I worked at the other Dairy Queen on West Johnson for a bit. Emily and Allison.
Oh, that's right. You were the other. Okay, yeah. We were the pool one. So
I mean, that's subjective, I would say. That doesn't.
So I just remember like growing up, always being stretched financially. We were always had a job. I started working then when I was 13, but also still going to, Lutheran high school, in which you were just jam-packed with, studying and activities and anything else that you could get into. Nothing out of like the ordinary, and this will all kind of, you'll see how this goes, my journey here. Nothing out of the ordinary really stood out to me in elementary school, other than it was always the same, like 18 to 20 of us, kindergarten through 8th grade, except, and you'll have to help me with this, was it 5th and 6th we were split, or 6th and 7th?
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th.
7th, we were back with Mr. Meyer.
Mr. Meyer, and it was all of us together?
Pretty sure.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Okay. Were you in the same split class as me? I remember what girls I had, but I was trying to remember if you were with me
It
there.
depends if you remember Kevin being surrounded in cardboard at one point, because I think that was during the split years, wasn't it? With Mrs.
Or was that 4th grade with Albrecht?
We had Kevin no. Who did we have for 4th grade? Mrs. Newbaum? Wait. No, I'm blanking out.
I had Albrecht, and then I remember having Zunker.
He was
And then
great.
I went to Meyer for 2 years because I was a split class in Meyer's room, and then we were all together in Mr. Meyer's room. But when I was thinking about that, I was like, nothing out of the ordinary really stuck out for me in elementary school, except for when that split happened, I felt like nothing was the same after that. Like we were always split. We were always split then, even like in 8th grade with who you hung out with, what groups you were in. I just remember it that way. So like, I remember like when we were split, I was like, there it goes. Like, and it was never the same. And I felt like it even carried over into high school to a point.
Interesting.
And
I do remember it being a really big deal at the time.
It was, because then they didn't even like switch it up then the second year. They
Didn't we still get to do recess and lunch together and stuff though?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
But wasn't it kind of a little bit of awkwardness at times then too because of it? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't.
And I think it kind of was. And I was always split and with the older class, I remember. Like we were split and I was in 5th, I was with the 6th graders. And when we were in 6th grade, I was with the 7th graders. But, so that's just something that I always remembered caused problems, to a point. And then, like I talk with my siblings quite a bit, like about these certain things, like when we're looking back on our childhood. And
that was just because of space, right?
Yeah. And I think teachers too, they couldn't get another teacher either.
Okay.
But a big thing.
Out of necessity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then I remember going to 8th, or, getting confirmed, graduating 8th grade. Did you have an option to where you were going to high school? Because I didn't.
Well, that makes sense for you.
I mean, it made sense just because both my parents taught at the high school that I attended. And I look back at high school and we talk about this sometimes too, like with friends, family, like, would you ever go back to high school? Would you ever go back to college? And I'm like, no. I'm like, high school wasn't necessarily bad for me, but I don't want to do it again. personally. So throughout my high school years, I mean, I guess it was nicer because you had more, fits in the sea to kind of find who your friends were and everything like that. Thing that I remember is like I said, we were always stretched financially, and I remember having to work at school in the mornings in order to pay for, attending school there. And I remember being like super embarrassed about it, and not wanting to do it, and also like I was never like a morning person. So then I was given the option, like, okay, then you have to keep your job then at Dairy Queen and still do that. And on top of that, my parents also had a action advertiser route, which is like another like newspaper route that's only twice a week. So all through high school, every Tuesday night and every Saturday night. So after like basketball games in the middle of winter, we get done with basketball games. I'd come home and I would still have to do an hour like paper route in the snow though, at night. And just knowing that, I think what really bugged me about that was the fact that I never saw fruits of that labor. Like, I did it to help support our family. And I still like think about that to this day. It's like, I mean, I understand why we had to do it, but at the same time, it just wasn't fun at all. So.
Why were you embarrassed about it?
I was embarrassed, but
you were poor?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think that was a big thing. I didn't want people to know that I had to do that in order. And I think part of it was too because my parents worked there, like at WLA, and for them to pay, or like, for people to see, it's like, your parents are teaching at this private school. Like, how can you not afford to send your kids there? It's like, well, they really don't pay that much. And, but.
Because at that time, like today, they have parent choice or whatever it's called.
They have the choice program, yeah.
Right. But at that time, there wasn't anything like that. So, like you said, it was a huge sacrifice to decide to send your kid to a private school, like a Christian Lutheran school like that at the time. So, I mean, I remember that it was a stretch, not only for my parents, but then for my siblings as they sent their kids through school. Thankfully, by the time my kids got there, they had the choice program, so it was easier to afford. But yeah, I can see how that would be a tough thing especially when you're like a teen, like.
Oh yeah, you don't want anyone to know like that.
Your reputation is everything to you, Yeah,
totally. And I always also felt too like being there. I was under a microscope at all times too. With having my parents there, so couldn't get away with very much. So, but yeah, I just always had this embarrassment about that. And what's odd is like you said, like now they have the choice program, and actually, since I have an older sister that was 2 years older than me, and the year that she started at Winnebago Lutheran Academy, they decided to stop giving faculty members a break on tuition. What that break was, like how much it was, I have no idea. But, yeah. So I think that kind of threw my parents then for a loop, because it's like they possibly were thinking less. They were, like they were going to be spending less than they were. So,
right.
I remember in high school too, like moving from group to group. I always had good friends, but I never had like super tight knit friends that I was with all the time. We didn't let others in. I just remember moving from group to group, not really knowing where to fit in, and trying different things and doing different things, not necessarily like just maybe changing up my wardrobe a little bit to, fit in with these people or whatever.
Mm.
Never really a peer pressure ish to do things. On top of that, like I was not a good student. I was not a good student academically. So,
In grade school too, or just in high school?
no, I think grade school, I was stellar. I feel like in grade school, I felt like I did just fine. High school was okay, like freshman, sophomore year, junior, senior year academically, I know I struggled. I don't know if it was the balance of like being in, plays and musicals and being, active in sports, but then also having a job, having help with that paper route, having younger siblings that I would have to help, and go to their sporting events. Maybe I was stressed and just, I didn't care. Honestly, I didn't care. It's like, if I can do enough to get by, fall under the radar a little bit, I'll be all right. But going with that, not being a good student, then you hit like your end of your junior year, beginning of senior year. I had no direction. I had no direction from parents, teachers, really. I mean, like I maybe had a teacher every now and then saying like, oh, we're going to go to MLC, which is Martin Luther College, which is our college for teacher and pastoral ministry, and I think it's because they just kind of expected me to. Status quo.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, I lost you for a second there. What did you just say?
Oh, okay. So like I like with these teachers who are like, wanting you to go there, I'm like, well, I don't really want to. Like I didn't want to be like that status quo. Like they just kind of expected me
to do it just because others wanted you to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't have a desire. Like I'm barely even making good grades in high school. Why should I be teaching other people? Like
When would they say those who can't do teach?
I don't think I would be a very good teacher. At least not at that time.
I will say on that particular point,
yeah,
I can relate to some degree. I don't know though if for me personally, I think that I just kind of was lazy about my career planning and didn't put much thought into it because I had siblings who went there. And so then for me, it was just more like I just kind of assumed that was what I would do, that I would be a music teacher. And I hadn't really thought critically about it at all. I think that I was excited about it for a time, but I know as soon as I got there, I realized I didn't want to do it. And it was for no other reason other than it seemed like everything I was learning was just for the purpose of learning how to teach. And I wanted to learn things just for myself, was the thought I had at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Like, yeah, it was a very strange time to make that decision. And I still think back today, like, why do we even now, like, pressure kids 16, 17, 18, make a decision of what you want to do for the rest of your life? I still feel like that happens way too much. Then, I just think the lack of guidance at that stage in my life really lacked from a lot of different areas. My dad was so wrapped up in everything he did for that school, for coaching, teaching, everything. And I love my dad dearly, and he is an amazing man, but we had no guidance from him in that sense. And then my mom having 4 kids, like, and we were all like 2, 3 years apart. There's 4 of us, like, I took full advantage of it. I got lost in the shuffle. I got forgotten in the shuffle.
Yeah.
So, the next big thing that I kind of remember from high school, was the death of our friend who was in a car accident in high school when we were juniors. Um, do you, and I'll have to ask you this, obviously, because we know each other and we went through this together. Do you remember it differently? Was there no mental health professional brought in?
I think that it was made aware that there was an announcement that if anyone needed anything, that someone was on hand.
Okay.
That's my recollection. I could be wrong, but I remember having an announcement in chapel, and I vaguely do remember something to the effect of if anyone needs to talk, please reach out somehow. I don't remember exactly what they said, but yeah, I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
And I couldn't recall, but now that you say that, I was like, something that, and I feel like they were like in that study hall room or that small room like off of our library at our high school.
Right.
Whoever it was, I don't even remember who it was. If there was someone, but I also remember when that happened. Like I believe you were there. I know we had a few friends that were there, and we were kind of like crying, talking, comforting each other, in chapel. And then we went into the choir room. At least I believe you were there. Went into like one of our choir practice rooms. And by the end of the day, this was the day after this friend had passed away. By the end of that day, we were told that was enough and to go back to class.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, so we're done? Like we just lost someone tragically in a car accident and now we're just supposed to, wipe your tears. Let's go. And I don't know why that sticks in my mind. I even remember exactly who came in and told us that. And being like, okay, so we're done. Like, and then no one really like, I don't know. I just don't really remember any help through that or guidance through that. And I think that kind of stung. So like, I guess that's one thing like throughout like high school, like between that and like deciding what we want to do with our life, not having a ton of guidance for us there.
Yeah, it sounds like you started feeling like you were lost during high school.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. I don't know who I was at all. At all. So then you decide, well, you're probably not going to stay at home with your parents, so better decide where you're going to school. So I spent my first college year at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota, which was 30 minutes away from the Wells College MLC. So I went to Bethany with two people from my class at WLA, and one became my roommate, and one was my best friend, who I called my best friend at that time, in my high school years. So I chose not to room with my best friend, and I chose to room with a girl that, I always had respect for. I didn't know her a lot, and actually it worked out great. That first year of, rooming with this girl was awesome. It was great. It was good to have someone that knew you to a point, but didn't know everything about you. Like we got to learn a lot about each other. We spent a lot of time at MLC, I remember. We came over and saw you and the other guys that were there a bit. And I think I was still kind of being tugged internally, like maybe I should have gone to MLC, maybe I should have gone to MLC. I remember calling my mom and saying like how I didn't like Bethany and everything like that. But at Bethany, I was a lot more accepted. Like I was someone who was like everyone wanted to know and be a friend with and everything like that, which was kind of reverse where I felt like I was always trying to fit in with people, and at Bethany, like people wanted to be with me. But I, of course, was reckless and dumb and didn't care about academics. So I was on academic academic probation my second semester there. And then after my second semester, I was suspended. So I had to trot on back home and live with my parents.
What did you go? Do you remember what you were going for when you were there?
I started with pre-nursing. They didn't even have a full program yet at Bethany, like a nursing program. So I was basically starting with my gen ed. And I did always enjoy science, biology, things like that. You know, that was my one AP course that I took in high school was anatomy and physiology. And I did decent in it. So I was like, oh, well, maybe that's the way I should go. And
so how did you land on that? Before you said it was just kind of assumed you'd go to MLC, and then you didn't go to MLC and you ended up at Bethany doing that. So first of all, that, and then how do you think career planning should be introduced to kids, or you know, what's the alternative to what you experienced?
Yeah. So I think, one, I think there was a few reasons why I ended up going to Bethany and not MLC. One being that my older sister attended Bethany, and my older sister and I were never really close. You know, we had 2 years of high school together in which we barely even, you know, like acknowledged each other. And then 2 years apart. So by the time I got there, she was in her junior year. I was in my freshman year. And some of her friends liked me better than her, which was really odd. And that caused an even bigger rip. But I went there because I wanted to start a relationship back up with my sister, I think was a big part of it. And back like high school, like my husband and I talk about this a lot, like about how to get kids to make better decisions earlier on, just with, you know, like talking to them more about not what necessarily their talents are, but like what do you like to do as well? Like even if you're not stellar in something, like do you like doing it? Like do you like the drive? Do you enjoy it in general? Yeah. Like I didn't have that at all. It was like, oh, hey, you're failing English. Get your act together. It's like, I hate English. I hate math. Like I absolutely hate math. I had no desire to even like look at any profession that had to do anything with those things.
Yeah, the big revelation for me was when I was finally at Marian University when I was like 20, no, probably like between 29 and 30, and then I finally did a strengths finder. I think it's called like the Clifton 2.0 or something like that. But it matches up your interests and your strengths with then career paths that match those. And it like when it gave me the answer, I was like, yes, this makes perfect sense. And so if we could do that kind of thing earlier on, I think that's... See, the other thing too, though, is I have to say this, is I actually wrote a paper called, it was all about life career theory. So what that says is like, so often you don't even know, like when I was in a senior in high school, there's no way I would have expected to then end up as a mental health professional. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I could have in any way connected those dots no matter what type of assessment or questionnaire I took. So I think sometimes... those type of assessments, yeah. Right. So I think sometimes just life experience it's like stepping stones. If you keep your values and your goals, like you were saying, just like what do you want to do, and aim single-mindedly at that, maybe you don't start out exactly where you want to be at first, but if you keep doing that, you'll end up, you know, each one will give you more experience on what you ultimately end up at, I think is. Yeah.
And that was another thing. I did have this written down. I was like, very few people like in high school gave guidance. I remember taking like one test I don't think it was the skill finder. I forgot what it was. But
Junior year?
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going in the library and doing a career thing once.
Yeah. But ever since then and still now, I still stick with this. I am this with everything. I'm very I can do a lot of things. I can understand a lot of things. I don't necessarily have a good drive or really, really book smart at something. I've always just seen myself as so average that, I mean, how do you guys want to be so average when they're still discovering themselves? And I still also to this day wish I would not have, gotten out of town right away. And I wish I would have just either taken a year off of school after my senior year of high school before I was a freshman in college, or even just gone to school at home, which is what I ended up doing my second year of college. I ended up just going to UW Fond du Lac for a semester. But that same semester, all I was focused on was getting out of there. I did not want to be back with my parents. I wanted to be back with all my friends that I had made in college. And that I did amazing. I did amazing there. Why did I not want to stay? Why did I not stay? I don't know, but something was drawing me to go back to where I was, where I could have fun and party all the time.
Mm. Okay.
So I always think that it was very odd that semester, I joined volleyball team at UW Fond du Lac. I got all A's and B's in my classes there. I just did really well, and I worked out, and I was out of it packed, but it was all me focusing on, I remember having a post-it note on my mirror that said focus on now, because I was focus on now, you get through this and you can go somewhere else.
Mm. Okay.
So I always think that's really weird. It's I was focusing so hard to get out of there that I did a fantastic job.
Huh. So do you have any idea, were you running away from responsibility then, or did you know that you weren't still in what you were wanting to do, or was there maybe something underneath that you were struggling with that you didn't know about?
I think what I was struggling with at that time was not wanting to be a part of the way I was raised.
Mm.
I struggled a lot, even though I went to, the rest of my years after that one semester at UW, I continued to go back to college to Bethany or NLC. And I don't know why. I kept wanting to go back to these Lutheran schools. And when I do really well in the quote unquote outside world, real world, I don't know if I felt obligated from my family, from, just how I was raised to stay in that space. So by doing that, you have to go to Bethany, you have to go to NLC, you have to go to WLC. These are all Lutheran colleges associated with our synod, So I think then that second year, let's see, because I had to write down where I was all my years of college. So I was at Bethany for a full year, and then I went to UW Fond du Lac for a semester. And then I came back to Bethany for another semester. So that would have been 04? When were you at Bethany? Was it at 04?
It was around 03 and 04, yeah.
Okay. So I remember coming back then, and everything was good, but let's see, we would have been 21 at that time, maybe almost 21.
Not quite.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Not
So I
quite
was
yet.
back in Fond du Lac when I turned 21.
When you turned 21? Okay. I remember starting then. So I don't remember much in high school, but I remember these years, 19, 20, 21, I started having a lot of reckless behavior. Reckless behavior as in drinking underage, going to parties, running from the cops, then getting to a point of being sexually active and not caring at all. And that is like, that's when I saw a counselor for the first time. And that was like 04. Yes, 04.
Okay.
And when you go to these schools, you don't go see the local, or, in the city, licensed mental health professionals. You see either the counselor at the school, who I believe they were, both of the counselors I ended up seeing when I was in college were both, certified and everything like that with the state and everything, and board and all that. But they're Christian counselors. So, I stayed with my first counselor for quite some time, and I'd say quite some time, like 6 months, really trying to find my worth. I was basically in love with someone that just loved me back, but only loved me for sexual reasons. And that continued for years. So I had to find my worth. So for 6 months, I really dug into myself with this counselor. And then I decided I needed more discipline in my life. I needed to make a good choice, go to the right place, be surrounded by the best people, So that's when I decided to go to ML. So I switched to the school that I had avoided for so long. I tried really hard there.
So what do you think made you choose that then? That's one question.
To choose to go to MLC?
Yeah. So is that kind of to try and find your worth then?
Yeah. Like I think I finally figured out I was worth more than I was than I was. And and I was to the point of like, okay, I need to find someone who's gonna see me for who I am and what I'm worth. And I don't think I'm gonna find that if I continue here and in this destructive relationship that wasn't even a relationship. I mean, we didn't even call each other boyfriend or girlfriend, nothing.
I think that's a good thing to talk about right there.
Yeah.
Because as a guy, I think that we need to encourage young men coming up that, first of all, I will say that, from experience, sex without an emotional, true, connected, committed relationship is not as fulfilling.
No, yeah.
So that's one thing. It's a lie that we tell ourselves that you can separate the emotional from the physical. But the only reason that the physical really has any meaning is if the emotional is there. Sex is supposed to be the consummation of love between two people. So as men, the danger can be to say what you need to say so that things get physical. And I think some of that, now I'm not trying to say that it's always a malicious perpetrator mindset. I think sometimes there's a genuine fear of commitment that men go through for various reasons too. And so, but bottom line is there is a reason why God says in his word that sex should come after marriage for so many reasons. That first of all, one of the primary reasons for having sex is to procreate, to have children. And so you're putting them in a world of hurt if you're not in a committed relationship, if they have to go through, you know, I can say that from personal experience, if they have to go through divorce and switching between families. So, you know, it's really selfish to not do it the right way, but also you're bringing a world of hurt onto yourself, you know. And so then I think with girls too, women, you can speak to this maybe, is from my perspective, it seems like one thing that a girl could struggle with early on is if she really does like a boy and wants his attention, thinking that the only way that she can get that is to give herself to him, you know, to allow herself to be physical, for him to be physical with her. And maybe she doesn't know his voice when she's not ready. And, you know, those are important boundaries. And maybe sometimes we need to do a better job of being open about that conversation and saying how to do that, you know. I don't know, maybe that is something that moms typically do, have that conversation with their daughters, you know. I don't know, but it's something that
bring that up. Well, you bring that up, but I think, you know, and I don't know, you know, this is something that I've talked numerous times with my siblings and everything like that, but having that direction from your mom, from your dad, we didn't get that at all. So, you know, I'm sure we had like the basic sex ed thing in 4th or 5th grade. And then I remember talking minimally about it in high school, except for when you're in a religion class. Don't remember it much in health. That could just be my memory.
Was it more just like, don't do it, and that was the extent of what?
Yep, and that was it. That was it. And yeah, so I think having that freedom, not having any guidance, you know, having that freedom to be off at school, be on your own, do whatever, you know, as long as you're not in any the trouble, you know, with legally, I was reckless. I was completely reckless. And to the point where I did not care. I literally did not care about who I was with, if I was being safe, if they were okay, if I was okay, if I even liked them. You know, it's just I had no guidance. And then when I got to MLC, I think that was when I was like, okay, you are at a very, you know, very spiritual Lutheran place that, you know, wants to keep your morals straight. You know, I really wanted to start buckling down on my academics. And I had 2 things happen to me at MLC that broke my spirit I have a few broken spirit points in my life. And that was like one of my first broken spirit time, where I was trying very, very hard to do the right thing, to get good grades, you know. And I remember asking a professor, because I was not doing well in class. So I, you know, requested a time to meet with him outside of class, got to his office and asked him, you know, like, I was like, hey, I'm not doing well in this class. What can I do to, you know, to do better? And he was like, well, he's like, did you read the textbook? I'm like, yep, I read the assigned readings all the time. You know, I'm taking notes in class, all this. And I'm like, can you like maybe connect with another student who does really well in your class and everything like that? And I have someone having a meltdown. And he goes, well, just read the book. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm reading the book. And I was like, can you connect with someone that can help me with this? No, you just need to read the textbook. And getting told that 4 times, it crushed me. It took me so much to admit that I was not doing well in something, because I was trying very hard. Then to like even meet one-on-one with the professor that I just despised. But I was like, put on your big girl pants and go and talk to him and get it straight. And then to have him just say that repeatedly to me just crushed me. And, you know, by now, you know, I'm in first half of my third year of college. Like, I should be getting somewhere. And then the second thing that happened when I was at MLC that crushed my spirits or whatever was I, was working on my self-worth, got myself into a situation with a guy, stood up for myself, said no, went further, still said no, ended up, being assaulted. And then to have that happen was it was hard. I mean, it was hard to have to tell your parents too what happened. It was hard to go to like the nurse and show her what had happened, and then to have to ask the maintenance students and everything like that, what's going to be done about this person that I'm like, I don't want to see them. I don't want to see that person ever again. And because they're told, well, it's going to be taken care of, and then go to class on Monday. Or this kind of happened on a weekend, and then to go to class on a Monday, turn a corner and see my assaulter in class. I had a panic attack in the middle of the hallway and was like, why is he here? Why is he here? Why is he here? It took like a week before they actually asked him to leave the school. And then I self-medicated with alcohol and just got into a bad spiral, and then eventually got asked to leave MLC because of my drinking. So the support in our Lutheran, in our Lutheran high schools and colleges just was not there for me. I hope they're there now. I haven't gone too far into it. But that was, and then in order to move on from that, I had to go and see a counselor again, in which I had one session with him, and it was horrible. It was a horrible session. Just in general, I think because I was asked to kind of relive it, which I understand, to a point that kind of has
asked to what?
Relive it, talk about what had happened.
This was at the school yet?
It was Christian Family Solutions, and it was in ML. It wasn't a staff at MLC. It was someone who they sent me to.
Okay.
And it was a horrible session. It was just horrible, and I did not go back. I felt like it was started off so wrong. I would have never started a session like that in my life. And kind of because of that, I think that's where I wanted to then move forward with diving further into psychology, which is what I ended up. I still have not completed my psychology degree, but I'm 20 credits away. But that's when I returned to Bethany and got through a bunch of stuff. But in order for me, go ahead, sorry.
Before you go on from there, because I'm really interested to hear where it goes from there, but I just, wow, how horrific in every way what you just described, and thanks for sharing, but wow. The 1-2 punch, of not only being in a traumatic situation already, but then, like you said, as you're self-medicating and just drowning, then to not feel that support again in your life. That's hell. That's a horrible place.
Yeah. It was. But also young age, your mental status, too, you're and also just being a victim, you're what did I do to deserve this? Yeah, I was being reckless. I was wholly being reckless and brought it upon myself, kind of thing. The normal.
That's what you were telling yourself at the time.
Oh yeah, normal thoughts like that came all the time. After that, point. So,
well, hold on. So I would challenge that those are normal thoughts.
Okay.
Those are negative things that you were telling yourself, but no matter what the situation, no one deserves to be assaulted, and no one ever has the right to cross that boundary. So in that sense, they're not normal thoughts. In that sense, they're they're a lie that you were maybe telling yourself, and I'm thankful
Oh yeah.
to see it that way now. But
Yeah. And it was just, like I said, it was those two huge things that happened to me where it's like, for once, I finally stood up because I knew that I had self-worth. I wanted to succeed academically, got crushed. I wanted to make better choices in my, personal life, and that happened. And I was just like, come on.
yeah,
And I think that's maybe why I had those thoughts at that time, was like, you're trying so hard to do the right thing and it's just not working. And so yeah, I left. Well, I was asked to leave MLC after a night where I just got inebriated to the point of needing to be taken to the hospital, thinking I was drugged, just then you're done. I left there and it was probably the best thing that ever happened. I continued, because of that though, I continued to still work in the town where MLC is, New Ulm, Minnesota. I continued to work there, but then I was going to school back at Bethany. I made big strides, just getting better grades, kind of zoning in a little bit more.
So what were you doing for school there?
Psychology.
So was that, it sounds like that may have been a catalyst for you to want to help people.
Yeah. And I really wanted to be a high school counselor for a long time, just because I feel like a lot of my stuff happened back when I was in high school. Like if I would have had a little bit better guidance, I would have had a little bit better support, I would have been educated a little bit more, on being sexually active, and like for those who choose to be, I think my life would have been different. I wouldn't change it now, but I didn't want people to make not make the same mistake. That's not really the word I really should use, but have to go through those things if they would have just had a little bit more guidance and a little more thoughts put into their heads a bit better. Moira. That then brought me back to Bethany. I was doing well, still working in New Ulm, and while I was working in New Ulm, I met a gentleman, and we were working next door to each other. I was working at an old German restaurant, and he was a teacher in an alternative school in town there. Alternative education, it's kind of for people are always like, oh, that's like the worst. You don't succeed at normal high school. You go to alternative high school. A lot of these kids were maybe working, support their families, so they could only go to school every so often, pregnant, or already had children, so they needed a school schedule that could work with that, or so many other different reasons. So he was working there and then bartending on the side at the place next door to the German restaurant where I was working at. And we met and we hit it off and we started dating for a little over a year. And then we bought the bar that he worked at. We made a major life choice, put a bunch of money into it. I stopped going to school and we ran a business. And that was like in October 2007 by this time. And then 7 months later, we got married. We were only engaged for a week. We didn't want to wait because we knew we wanted to get married. and we didn't have money to get married. So we got married, and everything was pretty good for a while. The recession hit. We lost. This is kind of just a little bit of an overview before some other things kind of happened. The recession hit. We had to sell our bar. We, lost like $250,000 just with doing this.
Wow.
It was very hard financially, but it was the recession. It was '08. Nothing was worth anything. Then by the way, sorry, him is Scott, who is still my husband right now. Scott, he was always a teacher. Took those 2 years that we owned the bar to help run the business. Didn't like it, we got out of it, and I had a few good years there. And then we started to move a lot. And it was because of jobs. Scott had 2 older daughters from his first marriage. So we wanted to stay close to them as best we could, which was never really an issue, even up until when they were in high school. We were always like about half an hour or anywhere from a half an hour away from them or like 6 blocks away from them. That was never like really an issue. My husband, though, had no real religious background. The last church he had attended was a UCC church, United Church of Christ. He knew my background, that I had grown up in a conservative, Lutheran family. But by this time, I was not very active in church at all. After what happened to me at MLC, even going back to Bethany, I did not continue to go to church. I probably didn't, chapel was always optional at Bethany. I didn't attend chapel very often. I had pretty much stopped. I very rarely went. When we got married, my dad, who is a pastor, came and married us. So we didn't have it in a church. We just had it outdoor in a little gazebo, and there was like 6 of us there. So we were not in any we didn't have a religious tie. We didn't have a religious, we didn't have that third cord of, a bond. It was never an issue though. We have a great marriage still. We moved to Wisconsin for a small amount of time because my sister was going through a divorce and we were living in her house that her and her ex-husband owned. With them going through a divorce, they kind of had to, divide up property and things like that. So Scott and I moved to Wisconsin, and we lived 6 blocks away from my parents, 3 blocks away from the high school that I went to. Scott was eventually asked to teach at Winnebago Lutheran, and I was coaching there at the time as well. I came in, was a cheerleading coach for them. This is where things started to get really hard. Scott didn't teach there right away. When we moved to Wisconsin, he was going through adult instruction classes. We were about to have our second child, and Scott was like, you know what, I think I want to actually, learn and see what it's all about and everything like that. So we had started instruction classes, and he ended up going and getting confirmed like 2 months before we had our second child. So it was really great. And then after that, then they were in need of an English teacher at WLA. They asked Scott to come and teach English there. And that was a huge struggle for us. Again, like with my husband coming from an alternative background or teaching background where he works with at-risk kids, he works with kids with IEPs, he works with kids with, social, emotional behaviors, everything like that. And to see that the school had a lack of all of that, like support for these kids, was so hard for him. And we got out of there pretty quick.
So when was that?
So let's see, we moved to Wisconsin in Tura was like a year old because Tura's my oldest daughter. So she was born in 2010. So we moved there 2011 and we were there through February of 2014.
Okay. The reason I ask is because, but now I realized just as I was about to ask this that, so for one of my kids, they had a individualized plan, but that was for health stuff, physical health stuff. So I guess I couldn't speak to whether they do it for mental health needs or not now. I know that they are coordinated with CFS yet, as far as even having counselors come to the school. So, and they screen them when they get to the school. So perhaps there's been some improvement as far as that goes. Yeah, but yeah.
It was at a very good time, and I think we both were kind of being pulled back to Minnesota where we had met, and he found a better opportunity there. Again, a teaching opportunity that was better. I still was finding jobs here and there to do what I can, whether restaurant or like administrative assistant jobs here and there. Raising the girls too, but I also found out I was a much better working mom than a stay-at-home mom. It made me appreciate my children much more when I could come home to them at the day rather than having them all day. And I know there's a lot of people that either can agree or disagree with that, but I just know that.
Sure, plenty can relate.
Yes. I didn't have much reckless, I bring it up again. I didn't have a lot of reckless behavior for those few years. And then we went to Minnesota. And again, it took me a while to find a job. Both the kids were still really young, but I knew I needed a job in order for me to keep my sanity in a sense. So I did get a job and found daycare, at-home daycare, and I was working to pay the daycare bill. But I had a great job for about 3 years where I helped homeless people kind of get back on their feet. I worked with refugees and immigrants, and it was a great work, and I really loved it. But then I got sick of sitting behind a desk, and I took up restaurant management. So I started running restaurants. Took up restaurant management.
Got it. Yep.
So I started running restaurants. I made some not good decisions every now and then, in which I then lost my job here and there. I had to know my limits as to what I would be comfortable doing. And I'm not going to get too involved into that with some of those things. But I would also get back into that impulsive, reckless behavior of like, okay, I'm done. I closed the restaurant. Guess what? It's 12 o'clock. The bars are open till 2. I'm going to go out and drink with my staff. Or then doing stupid things and then driving home after that. Nights where I would come home, where maybe I worked the earlier shift. I was home by 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m. And then, I'd get everything done around the house and kissing me in bed. And then my husband, he was teaching all the time and he went to bed. And then I'm like, well, I'm not ready for bed. I'm going to go out. And then I would go out, and that happened. I'm just kind of like reading my notes. Like there was multiple like random nights where I just like would go out and drink and talk and meet people and like not for any different reasons than I would have done it in the past. Just for hoping for companionship, for friendship outside of my screwed up career that I didn't feel fulfilled in. Then doing something where I was missing work then the next day because I made a bad decision the night before, and like, what is going on with me? And all this time, it was just a lot of stuff going on.
Do you think you had any conscious thumb on the pulse as far as like, because it sounds like a little bit of kind of escapism going on, and you mentioned maybe even why now looking back, why you think that you were so unfulfilled either with some of your relationships or even just with what you were doing at the time. I guess. Did you know that at the time? Do you think, or do you think you were kind of in a fog?
Nope. I was definitely still in a fog. I didn't really know what I was doing or why I was doing these things. And it was about, so a little bit of a backtrack when my first daughter was born in 2010. I was a mess after I had my child. I mean, like crying daily and for like 6-9 months. And I just remember always, like at that point, I had a church family at that point at the church that we were attending in Mankato. And that was a evangelical Lutheran sit-in church, and I had my family, and the same words kind of came out of everyone, like, you know what, it took you 9 months to create this child, it's going to take you 9 months to kind of even your hormones back out and everything like that. I couldn't last 9 months. I was sick of losing my shit daily, like mentally crying. I mean, my daughter never suffered, like a lot of people talk about postpartum as, like not wanting their child or anything like that. That was never an issue. Like I personally was a mess because now I was a mom. Now I was a full-time working mom. I went back to work 6 weeks after she was born. I was a mess. So I made the decision to get on medication. Because so back in 2010 was the first time I started. No, I'm sorry, 2011. Then it would have been. It was right before she was a year old. I started on a low dose of an antidepressant. So anyway, so now going back to real time. So this was about, let's see, we had moved back to Minnesota. Girls were both in school. So we were back in Minnesota. We had moved to our second place in our same town kind of thing. And I had a reckless night again of just, I want to go. And this time it was everyone's in bed. Everyone was safe. Okay, I'm going to go out. And I'm like, oh, I think maybe I want to go to the casino. And I drove on the wrong side of the road. And I got home safe and everything like that. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, I can't go to work. I need to think about what I just did. I lost my job then because I wasn't able to do things correctly because my mind was so impulsive and my actions were so impulsive. And then I remember getting the girls ready for a bath, and I was looking in the bathtub, filling the bathtub, and this was like This was only like right at the beginning of COVID lockdown. So now that we've jumped, yeah, COVID lockdown. And I remember thinking, they'll be okay if I'm not here. They'll be okay. I'll be all right. And having that suicidal thought, I was like, crud, I need help. So like I called my doctor right away. And by this time, this was almost 10 years after I'd been on that one antidepressant. I was on a low dose of antidepressant when she was born. I had slowly been pushed higher and higher after all these impulsive behaviors. And then I would do these impulsive things, lose a job, and then I would be depressed. So I had kind of tapped out on my antidepressant. She added me on another smaller dose of another antidepressant. It was very alone time then. And it was during COVID. And even though I was so lonely during COVID, but yet we were all there together. Like we were all there together. My husband, me, my kids. We were Zooming and FaceTiming with family and with friends. And I'd say friends, and it was like one friend. I wasn't going to last much longer. So we needed to make a decision of what we were going to do. And that's when my husband, it had come up like on that 5-year thing. And that's when he decided to interview for that job here in North Dakota. By that time, I was doing okay. We got here to North Dakota. It was, a little bit of an adjustment, moving states. But I got a job with Bite Squad, like a third-party delivery thing, doing everything on the back end of it. So, like, I worked from home. It was fabulous. I loved the job. I worked from home. I just had to do a lot of, like, computer database stuff. But I still, like, had meetings with people daily. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. My kids were both in school. Sorry. My kids were both in school. My husband was loving his job. Everything was really good. And then my background caught up with me. And even though they hired me with a pending background check, not, I just had a pending background check that wasn't completely clear, but I still worked for them for like 6 months. All of a sudden it came up, oh yeah, we can't have you with us anymore. So I lost that job. So that was a little bit of a hit because I was okay with the fact that I had something on my background now. I was still hired, thought everything was good, and then that happened, and that, broke my spirit. Decided to get a job working as a administrative assistant for a gentleman who ended up not being a very great person, and he made me feel like crap. I was trying so hard to run his restaurant, run his other business, do all his personal finances and his family finances, and I was working 70 hours a week and just was never good enough. And I started having those bad thoughts again and started having impulsive behavior again, not caring, doing things I didn't care about. And daily, like, I was just not motivated. So after him and I decided to part ways for the fact that I had been physically sick for about 2 months and we're starting to get migraines weekly because of the stress that he was causing me, and we decided to be done.
Mm.
And then I slept. I went into a pretty deep depression for about 2 weeks where I would take the kids to school. My husband would be teaching. I would go back to bed. I would get up at about to quick do the dishes, put in a load of laundry, make sure everything looked decent, like I had done something all day. And on day 15 of that, I finally said, this is enough. Get up and do something. And I'm going to move this because I ended up painting this wall behind me. Kind of weird. I ended up having to paint this wall behind me because I needed to do something. That's what I told myself. You have to do something. So I painted this wall. I sat in my kitchen, and then that's when I said, I don't want to be here anymore. So that was my second really big suicidal thought in my life. Never acted on anything, but painting the wall didn't even fulfill me anymore. And I couldn't get help from anyone. I sat on the phone after I painted that wall, and I called, because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a suicidal plan. I wasn't doing it that way, but I just knew I wasn't going to last much longer. I couldn't get into a counselor here. So this was in May. I couldn't get in a counselor here until December. I couldn't get into family Christian counseling until August. And also we didn't have insurance. I would have to pay everything out of pocket. I called another local place, and they were $260 for one session, and they could get me in September. I said, okay, well, that's not soon enough. So I went on Cerebral. Have you heard of Cerebral?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I need help now, right now. I went on there. I spent 3 hours on there taking assessments and everything like that, and met with someone the next day. And I was officially diagnosed bipolar 2. Looking back, I wrote all these things down about how I would be impulsive behaviors, and then I would go into depression. I didn't have a lot of manic episodes, where 2 or 3 days I'm just going nuts. But I had the smaller one where I would go for a few hours and just, I've never felt more relieved in my whole life than what I got for those 48 hours from them. I have a problem. And I think what really hurt too was the fact that when I had gone to these counselors growing up, one of them even reached out to my parents and said, something's wrong, something's really wrong with her. And no one followed through on it. No one followed through on it. And it wasn't until I told my parents that, I'd been diagnosed with this, that they were like, oh, so something really was wrong? This is something that probably I could have had help with 20 years ago. And that's one of the reasons why mental health is just so important. I think that's kind of my biggest journey about it has been, why have I not had more support in my mental health and guidance and everything, even coming from a religious family that teaches love and teaches kindness and all this, but then just to be, in high school told, okay, get up, go to class, be done grieving, being told, oh, your body will even out, you'll be okay. And reaching out at point and not getting it, for then to go online and in 48 hours have it just eyes open. And I started on a med now about 3 months ago now. and my life has been completely different and so much better.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I have a couple things I would love to just quick throw in here if I could, because
Yeah, most definitely.
you talked about a lot of really important things. So, real quick,
Close your door.
yeah,
So loud.
you're doing great with all the distractions, I have to say, first of all. So, as far as criminal records, that's one thing that, on the one hand, it's important to have accountability for people who are struggling and are maybe in a riskier place in life. And so I get that, I get public reporting as far as that goes. But on the other hand, you are removing hope for many people if you don't have a road to redemption. So what I mean is, like, yeah, okay, have it be a public record, but make a way for everyone, no matter who you are, how old you are. I guess I should say maybe there are some offenses where it's kind of like a permanent thing, but
Yeah.
You know,
Which mine is not, but it is. It's a fear, like the fear of the small thing that I have on my background, not allowing me to get anywhere in life.
I guess it's like, how do you expect someone to get better if you label them as fundamentally broken and just say this is just a criminal and you better beware, like if someone's willing to put in certain steps, go through certain classes or whatever, that should be there should be a road to redemption. So that's one thing. But I don't know if you heard me talk about this on one of the other episodes that we had, but the notion of piggy banks. Do you remember me talking about piggy banks at all?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to me, that's just such a really important concept or visualization, is that we often wait to address any mental health issues until there's like super visible symptoms or signs, like someone's in crisis mode, or survival mode. And so like so if you think about yourself as a piggy bank, and every day we're taking in all kinds of arrows from all different directions, and we go through trauma like you've gone through some very serious trauma. And so those are all negative deposits that are being put in your piggy bank each new time. And for a while you can shake it around and keep moving. But eventually, if you get enough of those negative deposits in there, that's when you start feeling depressed and start doing things to cope and to self-medicate and to soothe that pain, and anything that's around, like you're going to just grab whatever you can for survival's sake. Because there's a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but so like at the top is like a totally fulfilled person that's doing everything they want, and they have love and belonging, and their career is good. They feel purpose in their life. Everything's good. But all the way down at the bottom is just basic survival. Like, I need to worry about what I'm going to eat. I'm just in crisis mode. And if you're stuck in the basement, so to speak, then anything else. So that's when your piggy bank is full. You're not, any new negative deposit is just like the end of the world. You can't process anything. You're just stuck in crisis mode. And so, it doesn't have to be necessarily a counselor. The beauty of having a counselor is they're bound by confidentiality, so you can trust that they're not going to go blabbing it to everyone. But even if you just have someone that you trust in your life where you can talk along the way. And I think the one thing that I'll say from our background, or from, maybe this is common no matter what your background, but just among families, this temptation to try and sweep problems under the rug rather than, there's an expression that I really like. This, it says, it's better to face the dragon in his lair than to wait for it to come to you. So if you don't talk about, okay, I feel something's wrong here. Okay, we better talk about this. That's emptying out your piggy bank, right? It's getting that stuff out of the darkness of your mind, where you're just like, speech formulates our thoughts. So if it just stays up there, then it becomes like this mushy goo that we have no way of really managing, and our piggy bank's full and we just feel gross. So as we talk about it or journal or express it in some way, one by one, we're emptying out those deposits, and some may take more time than others, you know. If it's a really traumatic experience, and you might have to process that for a while, real slowly, expose yourself to that, you know, like you said, it's not you don't always want to just jump right into things because of how sensitive they are and how much time has gone and all the effects from that. And so I think you're 100% correct that if you would have had more modeling or practice in just having that freedom to talk about whatever, whenever you felt the need. And I guess it's like this, rather than waiting for trouble to come, so rather than waiting for the dragon to come at you, you seek him in his lair. And how you do that is you set up healthy routines and habits so that even if I'm feeling good, okay, maybe my piggy bank's only just like a little bit full with stuff, but every day, like I said, we take new stuff on. So even when things are going well, you got to keep those mental health boosters, those coping mechanisms in place, because if you don't take time for your wellness, you are going to take time for your illness down the road. And then you get into these situations where it sounded like to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounded like to me like, you know, there's all these outer changes that you're going through and you're not really feeling like you can, like you're feeling community or like you're feeling really attached to things. And so feeling alone. And, you know, I think one of the things you said was it was really refreshing to hear that diagnosis, just to kind of have something resonate that it was hearing you had, like something that was saying, okay, yes, there is something here. Someone's listening to me finally, kind of a thing. And
it was also like this, you know, like it was like this, it was almost like it was a tangible thing now. Like, oh, like something is not going well here for making me do these things. Like I would, you know, like the next day be like, why did I do that? You know, and it wasn't even always like because of alcohol or, you know, like there was other things I did too where I'm like, why did you do that? Why did you not feel like I shouldn't do this because of these consequences? Like consequences were out of my mind some of the time, or I didn't care what the consequence was.
Right.
And I'm like, why am I not having that conscience telling me this is wrong? You will get in trouble, you know, like, and then to be told, yeah, because it's a mental illness, it's a mental health issue. Like you aren't programmed right, you know, in some way. That's what I always say. Like something isn't, you know, I need help other than that because I'm a grown woman who still would be doing just ridiculous things. And now I tell my husband, and like, this is the thing though, like my husband and my relationship has been great through this. We've been together 15 years. We've been married 14. We've never once had any kind of issues in a way, but I never would tell him, like, this makes me anxious. Like what's happening right now, you know, with this happening and this happening, this makes me anxious. You know, I could never verbalize these things.
Right.
Like when looking back, you know, I like was writing all this stuff down, like when I was going through my last bout of, you know, 2.5 weeks of depression of like, why, you know, like, for example, one of the days, like we got turned down for like state health insurance. We weren't eligible for EBT, so SNAP. That was like one blow, 2 blows. And then, what else had happened? Something really ridiculous happened. You know, like I broke a disc. That set me off. And then I would be in my bed for a week, you know, but telling him now knowing like, hey, this happened today, it's making me very sad. If another thing happens, it's going to make me worse.
Right.
You know,
right.
but I really do feel like a lot of that is because growing up, you didn't. Like, I don't know. I don't remember having very frank conversations with my parents about feelings, having frank conversations with my parents about having sex or, anything, or even like money, like a budget or anything like that. These were all things I had to learn on my own, and probably not in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakes. Then I had to learn these things.
Yeah. So real quick on, I think for sure, like, first of all, I wanted to say about the, like nurture versus nature. Some things happen because of how we're raised, but one thing is definitely true is that trauma can change someone's brain chemistry. I think trauma is the result of sin in this world, and so even starting out at birth, sometimes people can have things that it's like that one passage, and they're, to the third and fourth generation, their children will suffer for sin. I kind of think of it in that sense as like, yeah, it's like sin is the consequences of sin are generational. Like trauma does impact someone's brain chemistry, and then if they have a child, then that's carried on to them. And so on the nature side of it, there's some things that someone can just start out with deficits already, or challenges, a thorn in the flesh, so to speak, that they're going to need to address. And in that sense, then medications might be necessary even from an earlier age on. But like there's also, for everyone, I think there's a period of discovery of trying to put it all together. And that's again where talking is how you get there and how you formulate it. So I think as parents, one big lesson that we can all take away then is keeping that conversation absolutely open between our children, like you said, with strengths and weaknesses, and just like allowing them to be completely open and raw, and realizing they are not a finished product and everything's on the table. And the way that we get through it is by talking about it as a family, and never sweeping anything under the rug, but just, going and meeting the dragon in his lair, and not running from those things. So I think that's a really important thing. So it's painful. It's not always easy, but if you don't address it early on, then it does become worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So it's either you kind of get to pick your pain, like either you choose to confront it head on, or you choose to flee and wait. And, maybe for a time that's okay, but don't wait forever,
Did you feel like you always had someone to talk frankly with, whether it be friends or family, in those critical times of 13 to 23? I don't know. Like, I feel like every time now is critical time. With me being, like how I describe myself is always average. I felt like sometimes I had close friends, and then I didn't. And then I had, like I said, who I thought was my best friend in high school. I don't have any friends anymore. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but like I have a connection with someone still back in Chaska, where we lived for 5 years. I've made like maybe one connection here, which is my pastor's wife. But other than that, I never had a close person. Never had a person except for my husband. My best friend is my husband.
So when I was going through high school, I kept people at arm's length because I didn't want them to know that because I had been exposed to porn at a young age, and so I felt like really weird because of that. And this is stuff I put together down the road, but like, yeah, at the time I struggled with keeping with one specific friend group. I can relate to kind of drifting around. I don't know if I would have even been capable to talk about my feelings, because as a kid, it's so hard to even pinpoint it sometimes, you can feel something's wrong, but you don't necessarily know why all the time. And then it's so like, it's like, how do you talk about it? But you know. But then, you know, with friend groups, you know, as it sounds like you've moved a lot, first of all, so that would definitely have an impact on how you're able to stay in touch. Yeah,
Really.
yeah. I don't have a ton of like close friends that I talk to every day just because I'm busy with work and other stuff. But yeah, but yeah, for sure. I think that's something that naturally happens when you get older. But
No, don't say that.
yeah, I mean, friends are everything when you're in high school, right? They're basically
Yeah.
how you're molded in high school. But
Yeah. No, and it's true because like even then I drifted. I felt like I drifted. I mean, I know I always had friends just about anywhere, but I never really let a lot of people in. Um, so yeah, I just, it's just funny. It's, you know, I was thinking about that question again. Like if you could do it over again, would you, would you go back to high school? Would you go back to college? And, I don't dwell on that. I think the only reason I thought about that is because someone asked me that the other day. I was like, no. But I wish I would have discovered myself a little bit more in high school, rather than seeking. I wish I would have been more authentic, I think. And in college too. I was so focused on out rather than in, that I didn't make a good enough connection sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of speaks to that whole thing we were just talking about too, of feeling feeling okay to be open and not sweeping things under the rug. I want to say real quick about thank you also for talking about. I think we all have moments in life where we can feel so trapped that it's like, you know what? If Jesus were to come right now, I'd be okay with that. Or even maybe having those thoughts of self-harm or suicide, and that's a real part of life, and that's also something that we have to be willing to talk about open and honestly. I believe the new emergency number is 988. If someone ever just needs to get a hold of someone right away, it's kind of like 911, but 988 is for suicide specific stuff. One kind of cool resource, if you need to get in with someone real quick, no matter if you have the money to pay for it or what like spiritual background you might have, is Catholic Charities. They accept anyone anytime. You can get in relatively quick. I know telehealth with counseling, you can usually get in a little bit sooner, but it's not ideal because you're not in person and you do lose a lot by being in person. So if you can be in person, that is the best way to go, but something is better than nothing. So, you know, yeah, just want to throw that stuff out there. But I want to say
That's very good.
I'm happy that you're alive and that you made it through those times. And even though there was some self-medicating in there and some crisis situations, I'm happy that you're here. And
I am too. And like, I just, I was together with most of my siblings about a month ago. And we talked about it. And that was the one thing that they said too. We're like, we're so glad you're here. And I'm like, I know. And it's just, I hate that those thoughts came over me, but they were there. And it made me see that you may need help. You may need help. And it's okay to like ask for it or tell someone about it and to be open and to be raw about things. And I think for so long, and I bring it kind of back to like, my religious background is you have to be strong. You have to be strong. And I think for so long, you just couldn't show weakness. Or me growing up underneath a microscope, in high school, and that like I couldn't show weakness. You didn't want to show that you were a failure. You didn't want to show that. But yet there was no one there to guide you through it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, more and more with my husband and my, conversations with him now he's with severe at-risk youth
Mm.
at Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch here in North Dakota, and mental health is huge. And I only hope that we can show that to our children as they grow up, that just be open with your feelings, because and also just be kind to everyone. You have no clue who's going through what.
Right. So like, it's so often we wait.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. What is that? Sorry.
I was gonna say, so often we end up like frogs in boiling water, where the heat's just been turned up real slow and we're not even aware of it, and all of a sudden we're just in crisis.
Okay, she went outside.
Okay.
There we go. She's gone.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the frog in boiling water thing?
No, I haven't.
So if you have water at room temperature, I always start this the wrong way. If you have boiling water, if you have a pot of boiling water and you put a frog in there, a live frog, the frog will jump out right away. But if you put a frog in a pot of room temperature water and slowly turn the heat up to the point of boiling, it will stay there and cook to death.
Oh.
So oftentimes we ignore little signs along the way, and we just think, okay, I can keep doing this. We don't empty out our piggy bank, and then we're full up to the top. We're the frog in boiling water, and at that point, it's full-on crisis. So the thing that I think, there's a term called trauma-informed care, and what that says is we should just assume that everyone we talk to is battling some level of trauma, because it's like on a spectrum, just living every day with we live in a dark world, right? So just living in this world, and just knowing that you're going to die someday is traumatic in and of itself, so there's everybody is battling something, like you said, and we should approach life that way, and have regular checkups, not only just checkups for our mental health, but regular instruments in place, or routines or habits in place that are going to help us empty our piggy bank and express ourselves, and keep those negative deposits, keep processing them as they're happening, rather than waiting.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to face it. I wish I would have had, or I wish I can only now, going forward, have the strength to face them as they come, rather than always doing, waiting until it's all the way full. So,
Amen.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Are we to the end? Is that current events?
That current time, I am well medicated and processing things a lot better. I am on a new job adventure. We'll see how successful I am at it, but I'm doing what I can to make my life successful and filling here. My family is wonderful. They've been very helpful with that. So
awesome. Do you go to any? Do you belong to any religion these days, or?
we do, yeah. We are members at Our Savior's Lutheran Church, which is a WELS church in here in Bismarck, North Dakota.
Okay.
And yeah, I actually do their secretary work for them as a little part-time gig. It's been a very good move for us coming here, and also coming to a smaller church. I mean, I know you know how large Faith is, that we both attended for quite some time, and it's really nice having a smaller church.
So you mentioned earlier you and him didn't start out having that cord, that third strand in your cord to keep it locked in. You feel like you have that now?
Yeah. Yep. Most definitely. I think it was I think it was always there to a sense, but it may not have been what the Christian church makes it as.
Okay.
As having God at your core. I think we just had a very deep, and we still do, a very deep love and appreciation for who the other person is, despite or because of everything that happened to them in their past, where they've been, what has done, and I think that mutual respect, and also within the first week of us dating, we were both like, hey, we've been in complete, I don't know, volcanic relationships or whatever before. We just need complete honesty. So
Yes.
honesty was our main.
I was just going to say, it sounds like you had complete transparency, and it's like if you have at least and only that, then anything else is manageable as long as you feel like everything's that you're fully known to each other. That's everything.
Good point.
And I think that's kind of though also where it started to break when my mental, health kind of took over, because I wasn't being very vocal about I did this, and this is making me really sad.
Mm.
This is making me really anxious. When I stopped being so honest about things,
Mhm.
where we, kind of started to, lose a little bit. But now having, Christ in our relationship, that helped. But I had to bring back my honesty. The
Mhm.
more honest I was with myself, I could be honest with him again, too. Like I said, our relationship had never broken or anything, but I mean, there's our times in there always. I mean, we've made, how many moves have we made? 9 different moves, I think, since we've, huge life changes. So.
Yeah.
That's it's really at the core of everything is being open and honest. The people who are not able to be honest about their insecurities are the ones who stay and get more sick and have more and more toxic relationships. So you need that honesty, but you also need people, love, you need commitment. And what a blessing that through all that you've been through, that you've had that commitment with each other. So I'm really happy to hear that. And, also want to focus on the fact that you have been through a lot, but that you're still here. And, thank you for sharing those very vulnerable moments along the way. I'm sad to hear about almost all of this is new to me. So I'm sorry to hear what you've been through, but I'm happy to hear that you're in a better place now and feel like you're able to be more free and open and honest, but that you also have that spiritual connection. And that's ultimately what I think is maybe a good place to wrap it up is it's all about keeping balance with our mind, body, and spirit is the thing that I think is really important to remember. Is we need to take, you mentioned when you were really stressed out and experiencing some symptoms of mental illness, that you would get headaches and you'd feel physical symptoms too. So, it all is connected. If we're feeling spiritually void, we're going to feel physically and emotionally sick. If we're feeling emotionally sick and not feeling like we're able to empty out our piggy bank and be fully known, then we're going to have physical and spiritual symptoms, and it's all connected. So it's important to do something to try and keep healthy physically, and to do something where you're having that outlet to kind of be raw with your feelings with someone that you can trust, whoever it might be, but regularly, even when things are going well, just being like, hey, I've got some joys to share instead. Great. But then also addressing those spiritual that spiritual element of it. So you got all of it going on, it sounds like.
Yeah, and to say it's all kind of trifecting in a good way, and it's the start of a new journey. Like now, knowing things, I can start a better journey for myself, even almost at 38 years old, and took a long time though. But I only hope that other people can see that mental health is a serious thing, not to push it off. Don't push away those feelings. Talk to someone. I waited way too long. So, but I'm here, and I know we're all very thankful for that. My husband tells me that daily. So,
You know, no good. You said you're starting a new kind of chapter of your journey, of your story, and no good story. It's like the Super Mario effect. It's called, where if you had a video game where your guy just went straight across the level and boom, that was it. It'd be a really boring game and no one would buy it and it wouldn't be fun at all. But if, your little guy had to go up this mountain and there's like sharks and stuff and there's all these obstacles that you have to get across, and maybe even takes a couple tries, that's a video game that people would buy and it would be interesting. And so every good story has a character arc, and so you have a lot of experiences now that have taught you and brought you closer to your own wellness. But it sounds like also that you'll be able to carry on so that others can benefit and maybe experience a little bit less pain along their journey. So
yes, I hope so too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was good catching up with you again.
Yeah, you too.
We'll have to do it again sometime, not over, recorded or anything, but just to stay in touch because it's been far too long. So
It has been, yes. And I just keep moving more and more west, and I don't know where the next venture will take us. So,
okay. Well, God bless you and the fam, and thanks again. Take care.
yeah, you too, Dave. Bye.
Bye.